Good morning, everyone, and welcome to yet another special edition of BusinessWorld Insights, presented by Tata Consultancy Services, Philippines. My name is Santiago Arnaiz, your host and moderator for this second leg of this four-part series on mapping out successful digital journeys. Digital transformation is more than just integrating tech into an organization's systems and processes. It's also a matter of talent, of upskilling your workforce to not only be tech-savvy workers, but tech champions, advocates for your organization's digital journeys. According to the Harvard Business Review, this type of digital upskilling represents a longer-term investment in augmenting the knowledge, skills, and competencies that help employees advance their careers, and in turn, your organization. Data shows that when employees are offered and encouraged to take advantage of upskilling opportunities, people metrics such as employee engagement and retention go up. The problem, though, is that too often, even the employees who say they want more training and development struggle to identify what they're looking for. So what then is the right way to identify and implement digital upskilling for your workforce? And how can businesses make sure that these investments improve both their talent and their bottom lines? So in today's discussion, titled Digitally Upskilling the Workforce, we'll be hearing from experts and business leaders as they pull from their own digital journeys to weigh in on precisely these questions. We'll be hearing from each of our speakers in turn before coming together for a free-flowing panel discussion. Now, to our audience, please make sure to share your questions and comments in the questions tab on the right side of your screens. That way we can pull them up for our speakers during the Q&A. So with that said, let's jump right in. Our first speaker is the country manager of JobStreet Philippines, the country's largest talent sourcing website. He's a staunch advocate of his company's mission of providing a job for every Filipino, establishing collaborations with government agencies like the Department of Labor and Employment and the Philippine Overseas Employment Agency. He's also worked with NGOs like Project Inclusion, Philippine Business for Social Progress, and private institutions to increase access to available job opportunities, both local and abroad. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Mr. Philip Gyoka.
Hi, good morning. I hope everyone is staying safe with their families as well. Okay, so let me jump right into it. If there is one thing really good to say about this pandemic, it is the acceleration to digital transformation and automation. Having said that, these two are very important, components in making and building our future. So we actually have a study that was done together with the Boston Consulting Group and the network. And if we can flip into that slide, we looked at what is the global outlook in terms of job resiliency. And in this study, it shows that there are roles in the future that may be of high risk. That means digitalization and automation may make those roles irrelevant in the future. On the other extreme, you could see that there are certain jobs that are in low risk. And true enough, in this pandemic, when you look at the jobs that was greatly affected by the pandemic, you would see that those are manual work, whereas those who are able to pivot to digitalization and automation have less impact in terms of jobs. So what we are saying here is that if you fall or those roles that belong to those at high risk, our employers and our employees need to look at other plans, building contingencies for their future. That means if customer service might be of high risk, I have to learn how to be in sales or in purchasing or in logistics. Whereas other companies or other roles in companies or industries that are in science or in tech already need to really upskill their roles despite the fact they're already in low risk, because the demands of having to improve your skills for the future is very much needed. Now, the diagonal line that shows us that in different organization or industries, there is the willingness to retrain. So it's a good thing that customer service, when they are interviewed into this study, their willingness to retrain and upskill and to upskill is really high as compared to those already working in social care, in health, IT, and in law. So for us, what does this mean? We need to look at the future to be very soon. Because of this digitalization and transformation, it's really important for everyone to upskill together with the leaders, the staff, and our organization needs to create a culture and an environment so that we will be still relevant in the future. Thank you.
Would love to dive into those effects of increased digital adoption on the job market further during the Q&A. Thank you very much, Philip. Now, joining Philip on our panel today is our second speaker, Ms. Ellen Imasa. As AIA Philippines Chief Human Resources Officer, Ellen is responsible for spearheading initiatives towards the company's transformation into an organization of the future. She has over 20 years of experience leading human resources across multiple industries in the Philippines and abroad. Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ellen Imasa, the Chief HR Officer of AAA Philippines. It is my pleasure to be with all of you today. Our topic is about digitally upskilling the workforce. It's very appropriate indeed, considering that most companies nowadays are going through transformation. The whole world is going through transformation and disruption, and this new situation demands that we look at strengthening and leveraging the knowledge and experience of individuals and teams across all parts and levels of the organization. Companies are aiming to transform into innovation and a testing ground for the future of the business, and hence our workforce needs to be prepared for this. Developing a different, more agile mindset along with innovative ways of working are expected to be key learning areas in the years to come. In AIA Philippines, we have embarked on a transformation to better position ourselves with the changing times. Our goal is to become a digital insurer where technology enables us to provide better service to customers and stronger support to our distribution channels. We want to harness the power of digital and data to create more relevant offerings for our customers. To be able to do this, we have launched our journey towards the organization of the future with the intent of making us simpler, faster, and more connected. It is indeed a big challenge that will require everyone in our company to be on board. Our people has to upskill while at the same time go through culture change to keep up with the demands necessitated by this direction. We are cognizant of the fact that going through digital transformation goes beyond what is visible or at the top of the iceberg. While there is a need to focus on the introduction of new technologies and tools, we cannot ignore the importance of having the right culture and mindset to be able to embed the changes that we want to implement in the organization. Our objective is to make sure that employees take charge of their growth by making learning accessible anytime, anywhere, ensuring that opportunities for upskilling are available, showing them the career opportunities open to them. We have to come up with strategies to help people see the value in investing in their soft and technical skills. It is not just about teaching them, but creating an environment where there is a mutual agreement that it is the right thing to do. Digital transformation is not just a matter of learning and having the new trends and technology in place. It is about creating an environment that fosters or supports a learning culture and setting the tone for people to pick that up and see the value on developing themselves. May this session be useful and be a learning experience for all of us. Thank you very much.
I think your framing of digital transformation as a cultural one, not just a technological one, is extremely important. So thank you very much, Ellen.
You're
Now,
welcome.
completing our panel today is our third speaker, the head of cognitive business operations for Tata Consultancy Services Philippines. Mr. Clark Fernandez is an expert in healthcare, finance and accounting, utility services, and telecommunications. He has over 20 years of experience in managing global delivery operations, transition, sales, and solutions. Thank you for joining us today, Clark. You have the screen.
Good morning, Tiago. Thank you for having me here today, and I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. Listening to my co-panelists, I can't help but to concur on the good points that they brought up. So let me share my point of view on digital upskilling, which is very interesting and timely from both employer and employee's perspective, simply because it is a key imperative for an organization to stay relevant in today's market. And that's no secret. According to the World Economic Forum estimates, more than half, 54% of all employees will require significant reskilling this year, 2022. Looking at this from an employee standpoint, being digitally upskilled can make you future ready and highly marketable. It allows for anyone to acquire the most current knowledge to think, act, and thrive in the business world. From an employer standpoint, having digitally upskilled workforce creates a competitive edge wherein they can offer beyond transactional benefits, well-differentiated products or services, and of course, lower costs. Simply put, that both the employee and employer will surely benefit from digital upskilling. Now, if we actually think further what it is, you'll find that this is not only limited to information technology upskilling, but rather every aspect of the business from automated processes to workforce strategy. Now, an essential component of it has very limited to do with technology. Surely, an employer needs to provide their employees with the right tools and learning platforms to go through digital transformation. But it will be a missed opportunity if an employer solely focuses on launching fancy platforms without the right focus on the human element of upskilling. Now, the good thing is that this is not new. The COVID-19 pandemic pressed the fast forward button. However, it has always been there. Now, I also want to make sure that we touch on some studies that were conducted over the last year, last few months, in fact. wherein it actually revealed interesting point of views coming from employees wherein they're worried about the future. Some believe their job will be obsolete within 5 years, which we heard from Philip, right? Some are worried that automation is putting many jobs at risk. And the report also reveals unequal access to career and training opportunities. Now, what we did in TCS is to actually address perceptions like those, create access to learning, and integrate a holistic approach for our employees. For more than a decade now, even pre-pandemic, our training and capability group, along with operations, incorporate targeted learning module on a monthly, quarterly basis and forms part of our annual objective and goal setting that gets into our evaluation process. Year on year, we invest thousands of hours for our people to learn and take advantage of the technology platforms we have. In fact, last fiscal year, we invested close to 130,000 hours on our upskilling program for our 5,000 employees. And this year, we're targeting to surpass those hours. Now, if you're going to ask, great, no? You have trainings, you have accessibility. Now, how do you reinforce that? Now, those trainings that our folks or our employees are getting from web-based courses or face-to-face, we actually have an on-the-job deployment that gets facilitated by their respective supervisors. TCS Philippines utilizes various motivational tools to promote continuous learning. Again, we're dealing with people here, no? We're not talking about machines. We're talking about enhancing one's capability. So what we did also is created a career path to motivate our workforce to proactively upskill themselves, and this helps TCS Philippines ensure that our team on the ground will have access to the latest technology that they can utilize in their day-to-day job. This also helps us attract talents given we offer certification that is recognized in the market. So in conclusion, Tiago, digital upskilling have a shared goal for both employer and employee. Now, if this is planned and executed well, the end result is highly capable, technology-driven, innovative organization that is future-ready. Back to you.
Thanks, Clark. Yeah, I believe it was Malcolm Gladwell who said it takes 10,000 hours to achieve mastery of complex skills. So I think investing 130,000 hours definitely makes for a pretty potent workforce. Now if I can have our panelists back on screen with me for our panel discussion. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Okay, so I'll be directing some questions towards specific panelists, but please feel free to chime in if you have any insights that you'd like to share. Let's keep this free flowing. I'd actually like to start things off with a question for Philip. Maybe you could help us set the scene a bit. Philip, you touched on this earlier in your opening message, but could you paint a macro picture of how the demand for digital skills has evolved these past 2 years? As you pointed out earlier, the ongoing pandemic has accelerated digital adoption, right? So I have to imagine that's shifted what organizations look for in employees in terms of skills.
Yep. Okay. So let me paint that the demand for IT, those programmers, UX and UI, is so great. When I say so great, it is now 5x in terms of demand. So just to imagine if someone is actually in UX today, there are already five offers, five companies asking that person to transfer to that company, and therefore it implicates that the war for talent for such a skill is massive. When you look at the Philippine setting, that is 5x. But when you look at Asia Pacific, where we operate, there is a huge demand, especially for tech companies in Singapore, in Australia, and many other companies in so far as the US. So it's really a massive demand for that talent. Unfortunately, in the Philippines, we have many who actually graduated from IT. However, their work is based in Philippines, but their principals is actually abroad. Why? Because of salary and benefits and compensation as a general rule, and that's why they're attracted to that. Many companies who are pivoting to digitalization and automation need these people, but however, just focusing on those skills are actually very much in demand. But we have to also remember that companies do not just thrive on IT and digital know-how or social media, right? So there are also important elements or talents that are also needed, such as managers, sales, and marketers. So these are also becoming a very rare combination. A manager who knows digital, who knows automation, is now the need of a company. And so that is a massive demand now in the Philippines and also across the world.
Thanks for that, Philip. Ellen, just a follow up question. So, you've led a number of efforts towards digitally upskilling your workforce. What specific types of programs or policies did you put in place to support that? And then maybe did you encounter any challenges in rolling them out that you hadn't foreseen?
Actually a lot of challenges. Transformation is all about change, and it's against human nature, as you can imagine, to deal with change on a regular basis. So it's not just about adopting new tools and technologies, just like what I've mentioned earlier. It's all about having a shift in terms of mindset. Having the willingness and the vulnerability to actually learn new skills that are required to be able to have a successful transformation. So there are a lot of things that has to be looked into. First is the organization. Is the organization set up to be able to adopt to the changes that it would like to implement? Are the people actually ready to be able to cope with the changes in terms of the roles and responsibilities, the programs that will be implemented for them, and will they have the appreciation to be able to embrace all these changes? And will we be able to answer the question, what's in it for them? What will be the sense of purpose for these people if they will actually embark on this digital transformation? So it is common for people to think that digital transformation is all about moving into the buzzwords, into all these new technologies out there, introducing it into the organization. But to make it successful, it takes so much more than that. That is actually just the tip of the iceberg. What matters at the bottom is really the adaptation of the employees, the adjustment or the transition of the culture in the organization, and embracing that kind of mindset that makes the organization um, really embarked into a learning journey that will be able to sustain the requirements of the business.
Clark, from your experience, what other tools and processes, whether technological or otherwise, as Ellen pointed out, it's also a cultural conversation. What tools and processes are available to organizations looking to upskill their workforces?
You know, again, it's a good question, Tiago. One thing that I want to make sure that I call out is that though the term digital upskilling commonly referred to technology, there should be an avenue for employees to actually practice what they actually learn, right? So three things that for us, as an organization, TCS, that we believe that's very important. First off is, if we look at tools, what are the characteristics that we're looking at to make sure that it will be beneficial for both us and as an employer as well as to our employees? The accessibility, flexibility, and reliability is actually three things that we first evaluate. Then second, it needs to be interactive. Third, it needs to have a platform to collaborate amongst learners and even instructors. So let me share what we have. Just like I mentioned earlier, much before the pandemic, TCS had already developed robust in-house learning management system, which can be accessed by any employee anytime on any device and anywhere. It is a standalone digital and technical learning platform. The aim is to build the competency of all associates. And that platform integrate virtual labs with simulated problem scenarios for learners to practice over 130 digital playgrounds. We call it digital playgrounds because again, at the end of the day, you need to be able to actually practice what you learn. Again, it's great that you're sitting, and doing web-based courses, but if you can't apply that, that's going to be nice to have. We do have 150 skills available in our in-house digital learning management platform. And today, we have more than 3,700 courses available in self-paced training mode and instructor-led. Now, this can be a combination of, again, doing it online, doing it virtually, and of course, what's really, really important is the ability of the employees to actually practice that.
I'd love to revisit that in a bit, but I wanted to make sure that I touched on this because Philip, you mentioned earlier that in certain professions, it truly is a job seekers market. I think you mentioned what, 5 companies competing over the same talent, more or less. So this is a question for the whole panel. How might companies mitigate the risk that talent that you invest in gets pirated by other organizations?
So okay. Let me have a crack on that. It's very difficult to actually, restrain someone who you've worked with and invested on. But I think what will happen is that, one, the company needs to have a reinforcement to say, retention is an important one. Salary having set aside, but it's actually more on career aspirations. It's always been there. The third one, which is also a challenge, is that how do we deal with millennials and the new gen, um, being able to keep their talents at bay, or in our companies. So that's a very difficult situation that we are having now, because all of us, including the younger generations, are well connected globally. And so, what I think is crucial in this is there is an important culture of growth embedded in all the things that we do in our companies. And it's a reality that we see that there will be many shifters, because it really depends on how a new person, or a young generation affiliates to a company. It really has to have an answer in terms of culture, what is the vision, and what's in it for me, all tied up into that system of the company.
So, Philip, it sounds like in addition to aligning the employee with the vision of the company, it's also making sure that you invest in helping them shape their own careers, right, with the company.
Correct.
It makes a lot of sense, and I think that's something that Ellen, you touched on earlier as well. Anything that Clark or Ellen you want to add to that?
Yeah,
Well, go ahead.
yeah, sure. I think first off is you need to know your people, right? Because at the end of the day, like what I mentioned earlier, we're touching on the human aspect, right? Retention most of the time anchors on the ability to answer the what's in it for me, right? People will not leave you if they see a path on how they'll be able to actually progress, right? So again, I'm gonna touch on that career roadmap. Digital upskilling would need to be integrated with that roadmap. Because otherwise, people will actually look for another organization that will actually address what they're looking for. So it's very important that each individual in the organization would have an individual development plan so that they will not actually leave you and look for other organization that will cater to their needs. So again, that's what we actually strongly believe in TCS. We cater to the aspiration and ensuring that everyone in our team would have the ability to reach their goals, and that's a key thing that we strongly believe in.
Well, at this point in time, given the pandemic, studies have shown that retaining people is more than just having programs in place, having a competitive compensation package, um, doing things for the employees that would actually appease them. For the most part, what is important is for people to feel that they are part of the organization. The sense of belongingness has to be strengthened, because that is something that we lost, considering that most of the companies right now are operating on a work from home arrangement. A lot of employees that we are onboarding have been with the company for almost 2 years and probably have not met anyone in the organization in person. Everything is done on a virtual basis. Just like any other companies, we've actually gotten into this rhythm of having back-to-back meetings. That we actually somehow forgot the need to actually look into the wellness of our people. Because for the most part, if you look at our data in terms of the people who's leaving, it's not really because of a better offer. Some of them are taking pay cuts or because of a career move. it's primarily because they are looking for something different, or they just don't have that internal pool in the organization. So I think we have to look at it holistically. I agree that from a talent management perspective, of course, we have to start from actually identifying the right fit, not only in terms of skill set, but also the drive to grow and learn in the organization. We need to have the capability of building programs to be able to help them develop themselves and be the better version of themselves and achieve those goals that they have set for themselves, and at the same time engage them to make them part of the organization, for the individuals or for the employees to see their purpose, their sense of purpose, and align it with the vision of the company. um, Attrition and has always been a problem. Retaining talents has always been here even before this transformation. For those who've been in the HR industry or HR field for quite a long time, this is an age-old topic that we've been talking about. I don't think there is a pill that would solve that. It always varies per organization, but it's always about people. And when it concerns people, the best way to actually learn it is through them directly.
Fantastic, fantastic point. Well, one other pressing issue that nations like ours face in this rapidly digitizing world is unequal access to technologies, right? So, question I want to throw to the panel, and maybe we can start with Philip. How might job seekers or employees looking to upskill find ways to close that digital gap? What resources are available to them?
Okay, so the pandemic actually brought in a lot of opportunities. One is that you have a lot of free online learning. It really depends on the person to engage himself or devote time for that upskilling. Imagine during the pandemic, we have Ivy League schools opening up for free, and to be able to understand and be able to get into those schools is actually a real leap that has happened. And so it really depends on the person immersing himself to learn on that. Aside from those are actually tools, no? Tools that we used to we used to use them for gaming, but actually that is something that we can use now to learn. And I think time, this, we're talking about people. The only thing common to us is time. And if I spend more time learning things and improving the things that I do and focusing on, the things I'm interested and be, aligned to what the job and requirement of the role, I think that is something that we could always, harness to be able to do that. So, in short, there are tools out there that we can use for free. We have our time to really consume whatever we need to improve ourselves, but also we need to look at a very focused learning system for ourselves to say, okay, this is something that I would need to learn in my job or in my future job. So I might as well invest my time and effort to it already today. So something that we all need to do.
Certainly, Clark, maybe you have something to add there.
Yeah, sure. So again, aside from what Philip mentioned, no, there are certain government-funded initiatives that I know that's have been there even before pandemic. And today, hopefully, we're coming out of the pandemic situation. I believe TESDA actually offers a lot of free courses, no, face to face, that you'll be able to actually take advantage. I think you need to start somewhere, right? You need to be able to actually understand what do you really need to become successful in your role, in the organization that you're operating with. And again, if there's a will, there's a way, right? You need to be able to actually find that motivation within you. Again, every organization can provide you great platforms, can provide you access, right? But if there's no internal motivation for someone to really upskill themselves, that gap will never be bridged. So again, you can take advantage of the free courses online. You can take advantage of the government-funded initiative. But at the end of the day, it's always available to everyone.
Yeah. So, so Clark and Philip, we touched on job seekers taking the initiative, on the government providing some resources. Ellen, maybe you could you can round out the stakeholders here.
Sure.
What can employers do, or what can companies do to help close that digital gap?
I actually couldn't agree more in terms of the offerings that's actually being provided. But I would like to take it from the context of, well, I know that we have students here who's joining us today, and probably wondering that probably they don't have the tools and the technologies or the exposure to be able to train themselves to become marketable out there. But what is important more than anything, just what Clark said earlier, is that all companies would have their own platforms, their own tools and technologies that are available. What we actually need are people who would have the learning agility to be able to go out there and take their own initiative to be able to acquire new skills and learn new things to be able to get things done. So that's what's important. It is not a matter of the availability of the tools. We have the internet. Everyone has access to the internet at the moment. It's just a matter of finding the right avenues by which people would be able to get access to courses. There are a lot of courses that are available, and we just expect people to like take advantage of that opportunity and make use of it. More than anything at the moment, the trends changes easily. It changes really fast. What's constant is the ability of people to adopt and to be able to learn. So that's the thing that would really matter.
Alan, yeah, I mean, you did point out in your opening message that need for upskilling programs to support self-directed learning, right? So to
Yes.
allow employees to steer their continuous learning programs. Is this something that you've seen work effectively in your organization? And what other considerations do employers need to examine when designing these types of programs?
It's actually a work in progress. I mean, the pandemic obviously pushed us towards a direction that everything has to be online. So the digital learning courses has to be made available, and it has to be curated based on the requirements of our people. We have programs that are available through Udemy for business. We have Native by Avado. We also make use of Lincoln Learning on top of everything else that we're working on to make it available for our people. So we garnered the days that people actually gather together to have this face-to-face training programs. It's really a matter of making it available for people and motivating people to be able to tap into it. On top of that, aside from the formal learning programs, it's important to have an opportunity for people to gather together. So we have what we call a community of practice. So employees in the organization have this opportunity to choose topics that it's not necessarily related to their work. It's actually based on their interests. So we have that for program management, data and analytics, artificial intelligence, human-centered design, and business process or engineering. So mainly it's providing opportunities for people to gather together and to discuss and to learn through brown bag sessions or just workshops or some projects that we can work on for people to be able to learn new things that's probably not even needed in their current job right now, but provide them an opportunity to upskill later on for a different career if they so decide to pursue that.
Clark, you actually touched on this as well in describing your in-house digital learning management platform. Just like those communities of practice that Ellen mentioned, could you expound a bit on that need for follow-through in allowing employees to put into practice what they learned?
Yeah, good follow-up question, Thiago. No? So at the end of the day, so if you're gonna look at it on a TCS perspective, we do have different roles, right? Every roles, because digital upskilling is very broad, right? You can actually look at it on different skill sets that someone would need to actually make sure they have to be successful on those roles. So what we actually do is map that out and ensure that, say, for example, for a manager to be successful in a role, he or she would need to actually have the basics: digital management, data management, information management. So those basics would need to be there so that he or she can actually direct his or her people on a daily basis. Now, we actually provide a space wherein a manager will be able to apply and actually have some level of tolerable mistakes so that that learning that he or she got from that course is something that he or she will be able to actually embed in his daily life. Now, that's important because, again, even if you actually think about this, even if you're in school, right, everything is theoretical until you actually put that into practice.
Absolutely. We do have some audience questions coming in, and maybe we can start with a big one actually from Dr. Melinda M. De Guzman. There's a question about change management, I believe. So, digital transformation across organizations naturally involve change, drastic change at that, specifically during this pandemic time. It needs a behavioral and cultural approach, additional costs. What reinforcement programs would you employ to engage and motivate the entire workforce to go with that change program to lead towards digital transformation of your organization? Maybe this
Okay.
So,
question can direct towards Clark.
yeah, I think I kind of answered that question, no? Because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, it's a journey, right? It's a journey. And through that journey, again, you need to be able to actually recognize some possible risks that you're going to run into or obstacles that you're going to run into, right? And for you to be able to actually reap the benefits of upskilling the workforce, you need to have that embedded and integrated to your day to day, right? Because otherwise, it will be a great program that HR will implement or learning development will implement, but yet there's no application and reinforcement. Now, for change to actually happen, it needs to be applied on a daily basis. Again, I'm gonna go back to that role base, right? Again, digital upskilling is so broad, but but unless you actually apply that, that's the only thing. That's the only time that an organization, even employees, will be able to actually see the change in them. Thus, that will actually transcend to the organization's objectives. So that's very important that it needs to be applied on a daily basis.
Yeah, let me just supplement that. Change management is critical in any transformation. And most often than not, we make the mistake of thinking that change management is all about communication. It's more than just that. It's the little things that we do that would make a difference, whether the change that we're going to go into will be embraced by the organization. So when we actually talk about, change management, it's not just the awareness that we're looking at. It's really about embedding it, looking at our processes, looking at the policies in the organization, looking at how we engage our people, looking at how we launch the programs that we are actually implementing, and most of all, listening to how the people in the organization is adopting and accepting all these changes that we are throwing their way. Because most of it not, we're so focused on just pushing a lot of initiatives, not really taking into consideration that it's not landing properly, therefore not achieving the target or the goal that we have intended it to be.
Uh, Thank you for that. Now, I actually think this is a good transition point here for us to take this question from Mr. Jeffrey Nalda. I'm going to throw this to Philip. Actually, is digital upskilling limited to the younger employees, or is it still applicable to the older ones? It's
Of
an
course,
the,
of
the
course not.
implication that we focus on millennials and Gen Z all the time. Is it an age-bound process?
No, no, no. Let me debunk that. The only reason why we're quoting Gen Z and the new generation is that 70% of our population in the next 5 years will be composed of them. But let me give you a very concrete example of that. We have a lot of displaced OFWs currently. These guys have been experienced engineers, in the service industry, and all of them are retrenched. About 30% of them are now in the Philippines looking for a job. But what we realize is that they are very much willing to be retrained, and one of them or several of them, we've seen that they've embarked on automation, embark on using new tools of communications, and therefore they were able to do remote work based in Philippines, but still continues the service in Dubai and in Australia by becoming consultants of their field. So they have combined both, the digitalization, automation, plus their experiences combined. So it really depends on the outlook of a person retooling himself and making sure that he's still relevant for the companies in the future.
Yeah, let me just add on that simply because our company's been in existence for 74 years and we're embarking on digital transformation. Roughly 50%, more than 50% of our employees are tenured. When I say tenured, more than 10 years in the organization. So as you can imagine, if we're just talking about digital transformation for the young ones, then I would end up letting go of everyone in my company. And that's not the way it works. That's why digital transformation, when you talk about it, culture transformation is important. It is not about the age. Learning is not limited to age. It's about the individual's willingness to absorb new information, to embark on a new journey. So again, it is not limited to the new ones. We welcome the new ones. Part of the challenge in the company is integrating them together with the ones that we have. But of course, it's a learning opportunity on both sides. The old ones to be able to share their knowledge about the industry and the experience that they've had for years, the new ones in terms of the new ways of working, the technologies and tools that we are introducing to the organization. So it works both ways.
Yeah,
Clark,
and just
anything you
quickly,
want to add?
Tiago. Yeah, just quickly on that, no. So one thing that I want to make sure that I call out, digital upskilling is a way to augment one's capability. So it doesn't matter if you're 50-year-old, 25, doesn't matter, right? All of us, no, would need to actually upskill our current skill set to stay relevant. Because if we don't do that, again, we'll be out of job. That's a fact, no. Now Ellen and Philip already mentioned, no, there are certain ways that you'll be able to actually take advantage of this one, regardless of how young or old you are. I think the key here is understanding that we need to be able to actually take advantage of what's out there for you to stay in the game, because otherwise you lose your job, and that's a fact.
Just as a follow-up question here, this one comes from Joy Mejia from the audience. For companies that perhaps haven't cracked that culture of continuous learning just yet, creating motivation and uptake can be tricky with even if you have all the available learning resources. So, what are some practical ways to launch digital learning programs to ensure that people actually pursue it, apply it to the day-to-day work? Is this done through coaching, through the influence of managers, maybe even embedding it in their KPIs?
Tiago, I'll take that. It's all of the above. No, it's all of the above. Again, every we're trying to actually embed this to our usual culture, and for that to be successful, you need to take a holistic approach. There's no such thing as just one action, then everything will just follow through. No, it's not like that. Again, it's a journey. Every organization would need to consider again what are some of the pitfalls. No, how do you make sure that there's like constant follow through of that objectives that you set digital upskilling wise. So again, where I'm coming from is that TCS created that holistic approach that would cover various roles, that would cover different departments, so that we all speak the same language. And again, we developed that in-house platform learning so that everyone would have access to it. Again, you don't need to actually force the learning, just like what Ellen mentioned earlier. It needs to be coming from someone. You set the objectives, then every person's responsibility is to check each other. So again, it needs to be a holistic approach.
Ellen or Philip, maybe it's something you guys want to add there. Ellen, maybe from your experience actually rolling these out, how do you motivate employees to utilize these resources?
Um, it's actually holistic in nature. It's not just about launching programs. When we're looking at digital transformation, we have to look at the structure of the organization. We have to start from that. In AIA, for example, we actually launch a dual career framework. So, which means that in the past, we would have the usual generalist track to be able to move into the organization. You will have to become a manager and we have people under you. By having a dual career track, having a specialist stream, so we're actually providing opportunities for individual contributors to be able to move up in the organization. So what does that mean as far as capability building is concerned? The next question would be, is that for the employees, what will it take for me to move from this level to the next level? So having this functional competency framework as an anchor, we should have this functional learning journey that people can actually look into. It's a basis for them to know that, oh, these are the skill sets that I would need to acquire to at least be considered for the next role. That is not automatic, of course, that would yield a promotion, but at least giving that idea in mind, concretizing it to them, that learning is something that they have to do for themselves. We can only provide them the opportunities and the platform, the venue to be able to acquire whatever a skill set is required. But it's really up to them to take on the challenge and have that motivation. Because at the end of the day, we can have all the tools in place, but no, it's not going to work out if people will not take advantage of it. So that sort of motivation would yield to the very bottom of, the employee's sense of purpose. Why do I have to do this? Requiring people to join training programs or putting it in their performance reviews. That works for some organization, and it was a practice a long time ago. But given the changes in a workforce at the moment, that is not the way to go, because true learning comes from one's own motivation to actually acquire it, not because it was actually mandated to them.
Yeah. So let me just add on a more practical side of things. An example would be we have been called to work from home. And in working from home, we have a lot of challenges. Like, for example, how do we file our stuff now, right? So how do we file our, memos? How do we file our presentation and all? So the challenge we gave to our team is that, how do we now automate all our filing systems so that we don't need to go to the office and get all of them. So true enough, some of the young generation and the experienced one went together, hand holding them to what needs to be done or the jobs to be done, to make sure that we are able to automate these things. Actually resulted in many permutations of growth in terms of how do we send our new paper or documents in the office, because all of these are practical things that we never considered during we were in office, but now we are working from home. The mind has set, and now challenges are different, but there are technologies and available services out there that we can actually absorb and connect with to be able to do the same thing as if we are in the offices. Like, we have digital parties, we have digital or virtual team buildings now. And these are the things that came out if we just need to feed the imagination and support the teams on how to be able to get into this challenge.
I think we have time for a couple more audience questions. This one is directed towards Ellen, but I think everyone in the panel could chime in here. How do organizations identify what specific learning opportunities they should offer employees? Sorry. Martin Joseph Badoy mentions the demand for data privacy, personal information protection, cybersecurity, machine learning. This list can go on and on, I'm sure. So how do companies identify what exactly they should be offering?
Well, this is dependent on what the organization is trying to achieve. Like in our case, we would like to become digital. In terms of our offerings to our customers, we would like to make things easier and simpler within the organization on how to go about things instead of the usual manual ways of working and operating. So in that particular sense, we have to be able to have a gap analysis, what is available in the organization in terms of skill set versus what we need to be able to get to the destination that we want to be. So it's a combination of buy and build. So there are skill sets that we would like to focus on and be able to build in the organization with the current employees that we have. We know that it is not possible to build all skill sets. Some of it we just need to acquire and buy it out there in the market and be able to integrate them into the company. So, for example, in the past, we won't have people with experience in artificial intelligence, in robotics, in cloud infrastructure, in DevSecOps. Those are not the positions that are not readily available in an insurance company. But at the moment, those are the skill sets that we are actually looking for to be able to drive the changes that we would like to adopt in the context of our digital transformation.
Yeah, just to add to what Ellen was saying. So in our company, we have what we call directed learning programs, and this is based on the manager's feedback, hand-holding their teams, what are the needed skill sets for them to grow with the company. The other one is what we call an agile learning, is that this is your interest. Go ahead. We give you a platform that you could use. We use Go One, which is also owned by Seek Australia. So we get to that. We actually look into those um, what courses are taken up, because you will see and discover new talents and traits, from your employees, to say, this person really is interested in artificial intelligence, and there are artificial intelligence unit in SEEK. And that's why one of those recommendation can be, hey, why don't you try a new career in our other company within the conglomerate. So it's something that it's really interesting. People who are given direction will follow. Some of them given agile learning experiences. Actually, you will find out more that someone is really interested into, let's say, social media, or into um, the cloud programming. So it's something interesting, for as long as I think as a company we set up the culture that, hey, you need to learn to relearn. Okay, so and that is supported.
Yeah. And to add on to that, Tiago, no, I think there should be like a strong link between the company's vision and to the individual development plans that an organization should be fostering. So today in TCS we have hundreds of employees that are presently enrolled in a purpose-driven learning framework. We call it Elevate, which actually helps bring tighter linkage between learning and career for each role or segment. The program that we actually launched focuses primarily on achieving individual aspirations and fueling internal growth.
Ellen actually touched on this earlier, but I would like to, if the group could parse this out a bit further. Um, when we're talking about identifying the skill sets we need in our organizations, when do we choose to upskill an existing employee, and then when do we choose to bring in talent from outside? I'll throw this to Philip first, maybe.
Okay. So our rule of thumb is that internal first. Make sure that there is already because there's already internal equity, right? But there are really some skill sets that you can't find in your existing plantilla, and therefore you need to buy those talents. Buying talents nowadays is very expensive, and of course there's always culture fit into the job, and so that's really something that we need to weigh in, right? But if we can develop someone who's interested and has potential, well, I mean, we would always put in into that investment.
Ellen, Clark.
So when we talk about when do we buy instead of build, we have to look at what specific skill set are we talking about. Because, for example, if we are going to change the very backbone of our system, all our legacy systems. This is not something that we can just expect people who's been with the company for X number of years to be able to develop, because they have gotten used to it. If we would like to adopt to the latest one, that would to the latest technology that would be able to cater to our requirements, then there is a need to be able to integrate new talents into the organization. It doesn't mean that the existing employees will not be useful in this course, because mainly digital does it it's there's a difference between building the digital platform and at the same time having the organization actually use it, which also requires upskilling the rest of the organization, because otherwise we'll have new tools and technologies and the rest of the people, and we cannot hire obviously everyone. We have to make use of our current people, be able to upskill them. We need to be able to train them. So anything that can be trained, that can be acquired through exposure, through practices, if this is something that people are interested in, they have a background for it, then we are all for it. That's why we have these communities of practice. Probably there's someone in accounting who has interest in artificial intelligence, and who's actually learning at their own pace, then that is something that we can tap, of course. But we cannot expect that it would be readily available internally. Therefore, in those cases, we need to explore the possibility of actually getting talents outside.
Yep. And Tiago, for us, as you're aware, we're one of the biggest IT company in the world, right? So constantly we do uptrain and we do buy talents, right? In fact, today in the Philippines, we have around 2,000 associates trained on array of digital technologies, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, data science, machine learning, name it, right? Because it's a requirement. And that's what we actually do. That's what we offer into the market. So there's a constant need for us to make sure that we have this talent pool readily available for our clients. Now, it's not a question of when do we upskill or when do we buy, because we need to be able to actually always be on our toes to be competitive and offer differentiation for our clients.
This question comes from Nona Etiva, and I think this is just to flip it, going now towards the job seeker perspective. What are the top 5 skills today that a person should have while looking for employment in this current digital environment?
Okay, let me answer that. Okay, let me just debunk that when you're talking about digitalization and automation, it only means like the digital IT programmers. No, that's not what we mean here. What we mean is here that of course you need to have that hard core skills like digital data analysis, your technical skills, but more importantly or more equally important are your soft skills like communications and teamwork, problem solving and critical thinking, leadership and management. These are transferable skills that are needed before and actually more importantly, more relevant now because even if you know coding, but you don't know how to manage your team, that will not fly, right? So these are really important hand in hand in looking for current job placements in this current environment.
I agree. I would add on to that. I think it's very important. More than the technology and the digital journey, it's more on the skills, right? Every skills has digital component to it. So think about communication, right? The way you communicate today can be done digitally. You can actually send an email. That's a digital form, right? And you need to know the basics, how to actually access email, how do you attach, so on and so forth. That's basic. I think that that misconception about digital upskilling is mostly about coding or programming. That's not what it is. No, it is about augmenting your soft skills and making your job easier, more efficient, and you actually arrive in the same output or better output as to what you were doing, previously. So that's very important.
Mhm. Let me just wrap that up for the team. Our theme today is about digitally upskilling our workforce. So if in the context of like candidates or that we would like to consider in the organization, it is important that that person would actually have the the need to learn, the drive to learn, the motivation to actually acquire new skills. And it's not actually necessary that you have all the skill sets that we need. That would be great but rare. But what we actually need is someone who's willing to be upskilled and who has the drive for it, who has the appetite for it, because at the end of the day, it's more than just the skills that you have. It's really about learning how to get things done. It's learning how to collaborate with the people that you're going to be with. It's learning the ways of working in the organization that you're going to join.
Absolutely. Now we're approaching the end of our session today. So before we wrap, though, perhaps we can have each of our speakers share some final words for our audience today. Ellen, well, let's start with you.
Okay, as I've mentioned earlier, digital transformation is a journey. It is not just about tools and technologies. It is more about, adapting to the changes that's happening, shifting our mindsets, learning new things, and actually thinking of ways by which we can actually contribute to the organization and at the same time enrich ourselves individually, both professionally and as a person. So again, it's not just about having all the hard skills, it's really looking at the soft skills as well, and looking at the overall fit in terms of the culture of the organization.
Philip?
Okay, so what we say in many of our town halls is that the future is in your fingertips, and it's really correct, right? So if that anecdote, the future is really up to you. If you want to use your fingertips, you need to learn, you need to unlearn, and you need to face the challenges that upskilling would require investment of your time, effort, and yourself if you really want to be part of that relevant future that we're talking about. So a lot of it in the company culture, in the support teams, in the government, all of them are actually there. But if you do not willingly embrace that, challenge, opportunity, and future, you will not be relevant.
And Clark?
Sure.
You have the
I want to wrap this up by simply stating that this is a journey. And just like any other journey, there will be detours, roadblocks, and tangible results will take time. And both the private and public sectors need to create sustainable support, right infrastructure, and motivation network for those who are ready to start or have already started the journey. Tiago?
brilliant. I think that's a fantastic place to end today's session. So thank you again very, very much, Mr. Philip Gioca, Ms. Ellen Imasa, and Mr. Clark Fernandez. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on today's session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you as well to Tata Consultancy Services Philippines for making this session possible. To our supporting organizations, the British Chamber of Commerce Philippines, the Management Association of the Philippines, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and to our media partner, the Philippine Star, thank you. And of course, to everyone watching, wherever in the world you're tuning in from, do join us again in the next session of Mapping Out Successful Digital Journeys. And be sure to follow TCS Asia Pacific as well as BusinessWorld online for updates on more projects like this. My name is Tiago Renais. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in the next session of Business World Insights in partnership with Tata Consultancy Services. Stay safe, stay healthy.